Welcome to the first program in 2025. Looking forward. First thing, please put your phones on mute or vibrate. And if you receive a call, please take the call outside. I hope you're going to enjoy the program today. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward. There's an old saying. I want the power to change what I can change, the strength to leave alone what I can't change, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I say to you, put your energy into what you still have the power to change. We have our first teller, Michelle Woods. She's coming to us via Zoom, fingers crossed. We're completely discombobulated when we don't have Andy. And we don't have Andy. You have me, and Dan is coming in with me today, and we hope it all goes. So far, it's gone straight, right? Please welcome via Zoom Michelle Woods, who's an author and a storyteller, and always a treat to her audience. Michelle.
Hello, everyone. Can you see me?
Well, then take ours.
Okay. Well, good morning. Happy to be here. And well, good afternoon, actually. Happy to be here and tell my story today. And the name of my story is, it's about, well, let's just say it's about moving on. Let's just call it that. That's the theme for today. So I was in San Francisco near the Moscone Center. A man approached me and asked me if I wanted to buy a newspaper written and published by the unhoused community. Absolutely, I said. How much? $2. I got my wallet out of my purse. Inside, there were 3 bills, 2 20s and 1 10. No $1 bills, but I had lots of change, enough to give the man $2 for the newspaper and maybe a little extra. The man was watching me very carefully. As I fished quarters out of the little pouch where I kept my coins, he reached into the other side of my wallet, liberated a $10 bill, and ran away. It happened so quickly, I didn't have time to scream or to take the 20 back or anything. I was stunned and angry. No matter. The important thing was I had been violated, ripped off. No good deed goes unpunished. Moving forward, I vowed never, ever, ever to give money to a panhandler again. I would donate to Loaves and Fishes, the Salvation Army, Mercy Peddlers, but I would not open my wallet for anyone who approached me on the street. Years later, I'm in Sacramento at the Target on Broadway. In my wallet, there is a $200 gift card. I had just sold my house and my real estate had given me the card. She told me to buy something for my new house, something from the Magnolia collection, perhaps, like a lamp or a eucalyptus wreath. Only I was downsizing. My son was in college. My daughter had just started an internship in the Bay Area, and my new house was smaller than my old house. I didn't have time for more stuff. I was in the middle of a Marie Kondo purge. I was trying to get rid of stuff. So instead of buying lamps and eucalyptus wreaths, I would pop into Target every once in a while and use the gift card to stock up on practical stuff like toothpaste or socks or HVAC filters. On this particular day, I was planning to stock up on wintergreen Tic Tacs. So far, I had only managed to use a small fraction of the $200 gift card. It was burning a hole in my pocket. That day, as I walked across the Target parking lot, I saw two boys standing outside of the store. The older boy was about 16, the younger boy about 9. "Excuse me, ma'am," said the older boy. "Can you give me $1?" He wore a blue polo shirt. The younger boy had a picture of a dinosaur on his shirt. They reminded me of my son's friends, the kids that used to come over to my house to play video games. The request, though, made me feel uneasy. The boys did not look like panhandlers, but that promise I made myself and so long ago in San Francisco was tattooed inside of my skull. Never give money to anyone who approaches you on the street. I was about to walk away, but I felt this little nudge. It was different from the thoughts that usually bounce around inside my head. I didn't want to engage, but I heard myself asking the older boy, "What's your name?" "Trey." "Why do you need $1, Trey?" "I want to buy something, some food for my brother." "What's his name?" "Tony." We both looked at Tony, who was looking at the ground like he was embarrassed or scared. I asked Trey, "What kind of food do you want to buy?" "I don't know, a burrito or something?" "Okay, let's go inside." The boys followed me into Target. We walked by the Magnolia collection to the frozen food aisle. Now, my plan was to purchase a family pack of bean and cheese burritos, the kind that you heat up in the microwave. I used to buy these for my own kids to eat when they came home from school. On that day, though, there were no burritos, but there was a large selection of Hungry Man frozen dinners. I told the boys to get the one they liked. Trey chose Salisbury steak. Tony got country fried chicken. Tony didn't look scared anymore. He was grinning ear to ear. I had never seen anyone so excited about the prospect of eating a frozen dinner. I felt that little nudge again, and more words came out of my mouth that I had not intended to say. I asked them, "Would you like to get another Hungry Man dinner for later?" There was a look of shock on the boys' faces, like I had just given them the winning Powerball ticket. As we left the frozen food section, we passed by the produce. Again, the nudge. And it occurred to me that Hungry Man dinners weren't exactly healthy. So to mitigate the effects of all the sodium and cholesterol, a salad was needed. I pointed to the display of salads in the refrigerated case. "Would you like to get a salad?" There's Caesar, Asian sesame, and Southwestern chopped. Well, they gave me a questioning, confused look. "Look," I said, reverting to full-on mom mode. "If you want a salad, I'll get you a salad. But if you're not going to eat it, I won't get it." Reluctantly, Trey picked up the Southwestern salad. "Can I get a soda too?" he asked. "No sodas. They're bad for your teeth. If you're thirsty, I have some bottled water in my car from Costco." Trey shook his head. That's okay." At the checkout stand, the nudge made another appearance. Perhaps my stance on sodas was too harsh. After all, everyone needs a little sweetness in their life. I noticed the display of candy next to the magazine. "Would you like to get some candy for dessert?" Both boys got a bag of Skittles. The cashier began scanning our items. I got my gift card out of my purse. Guess what happened? That's right. Once again, the nudge showed up, but this time it felt more like a poke. Give the boys the card. They need it. You don't. I told the nudge to go away. Hadn't I done enough? The cashier asked me if I needed a bag. I said no. I had a cloth bag in my purse. Trey, the older boy, cleared his throat. Excuse me, he said. I would like a bag. Reality check. I knew that the boys liked Hungry Man dinners and Skittles, but I didn't know much else about them. What if they didn't live close by? They would need a bag to carry this stuff home. And where were their parents? Did they even have a microwave? I whispered to Trey, do you have a place to heat this up, a microwave? Are you guys going to be okay? Trey nodded yes, without making eye contact. Whatever was going on in his life, he didn't want to talk about it. As we prepared to leave, I spotted a water fountain not too far away. I told them, you guys should get something to drink. It's hot outside. You look dehydrated. Much to my surprise, they took my advice. The last time I saw them, they were on their way to the water fountain. Trey was swinging the bag with the Hungry Man dinners and the salad. Tony followed behind, carrying the bag with the Skittles. A month later, I returned to Target to buy some hot rollers for my hair. I thought about the boys and that last nudge, the poke, the one I ignored. After I bought the rollers, I still had a balance of about $80 on my gift card. It was still burning a hole in my pocket.
Thank you, Michelle. I told you she would be good.
Great to see
All
you
right.
all.
Move forward to the life of your dreams. The next teller has a special meaning. She's a real gem because she's my granddaughter. And I asked her, persuaded her, coerced her to come today and do her first storytelling. You can tell from the program that she's experienced, but she's never presented a story before. I would like to welcome to you my granddaughter, Lauren Orman.
Oh, hello, this is my first story, so if my handshake, no, they don't. Okay. So my family wrapped up Christmas Eve by doing what we usually do, which is sharing family stories and anecdotes. And I love when we do this, even though I've heard every story like 100 times. But my favorite stories are always anything to do with my dad growing up as a little boy. And my grandmother wrapped up one of these stories and then turned to my dad and said, Tom, I don't think your dad ever realized how much of a rascal you really are. And frankly, I think my favorite story about my dad as a little boy is the perfect example of that. So, my dad realized he had free will in the summer of 1974. He was 4 years old and he was the poster child of what a little boy looks like in the 70s. Picture a little boy in the 70s, it's a photo of my dad. I mean, sun-bleached blonde, straight across bowl cut, corduroy overalls, the whole bit. He was a mid-century cherub. So my dad's best friend was a little boy by the name of Stuart, who was the only other little boy on their country road, the only other little boy for miles. He was bookish and a little odd, but he was nice and he was there, and they became friends as children often do. Stuart had been spending his time reading all about the stories of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn and their adventures coming of age on the Mississippi River. And he relayed all of these stories to my dad. But because he's a little boy, he only told him the fun parts. Not all the trials and tribulations that come along with a character on the hero's journey. And my dad had the biggest idea he'd had to date in his first 4 years of life. We've got a river right there. We should do that. So the plan is made and set, and my dad tells his sister Becky, who's at the wiser beyond her years, world-weary age of 6. You might not think that's very old, but to a 4-year-old, somebody with 2 whole more years of life experience on you, that's like Buddha. So he tells her everything and shares the most important rule for last. Do not tell Mom. So Mom, or my grandmother Joyce, is not a scary woman by any means. It's not an angry woman. She's just very straightforward. She tells it like it is. For example, the few months before my dad realized he had free will, he realized what it meant to be emotionally invested in something. And that something, for some reason, was the 1956 movie musical The King and I, which is ironic because my dad does not like musicals. But for some reason, when that came on in that late spring night, little Tom was entranced. Now, I don't know if you know how The King and I ends, but at the end of The King and I, the king dies, and Tom was devastated. So much so that when Joyce came in to tuck him in for bed, he was crying. And she said, Tom, why are you crying? And Tom said, well, we were watching The King and I, and the king died at the end. And Joyce says, Tom, everybody dies. I'm gonna die, your dad's gonna die, and someday you're gonna die. Time for bed. No harm at all. She just tells it like it is. The funny thing about that, though, is that my dad, up until those first 4 years, hadn't gotten in enough trouble to ever experience past straightforward mom. He'd only ever seen straightforward mom, hence the #1 rule, do not tell Mom. Nevertheless, he steals away under the cover of night out of his bedroom window, knapsack tied to a stick over the shoulder, very on theme. He meets Stuart at the end of their little country road, and there they are, 2 little boys under the cover of night who go up and over the levee, down, 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 into a little sandbank on the edge of the Sacramento River. And they find out very quickly that even though it's early June, it gets cold down there. Even after the small fire they build, which gets blown out by the wind, there they are, 2 little boys shivering, huddled together, sharing one blanket. The cold sandbank is their mattress. And they're like that for quite some time, until high above them, 2 headlights pierce the night air high up on the levee, and they go back, and they turn around, and they come back over and over and over. And it was finally Stuart who said what they were both thinking. He said, boy, that car's moving fast. And Tom says, yeah. And Stuart says, God, who's ever driving at that, they must be really upset. And Tom says, yeah. And Stuart says, that kind of looks like your mom's car. And Tom says, yeah. And Stuart says, should we go home? And Tom says, no, no. And they didn't until dawn, when it got too cold. 2 little boys come back up and over the levee, back into civilization. And they meet at the end of that country road and look at each other. And knowing the doom that awaited them at their respective homes, they shook hands as if to say, Godspeed, soldier. Now, the doom that awaited Tom could be better described as a war zone. So when Joyce came back from her late night Levee Road rampage looking for her missing son, she came back home in the early hours of the morning, exhausted, worse for wear, a mess, frankly. When she was at that level, that's when Becky decided to crack and tell her mother all about her little brother's Riverside Odyssey / blatant lie. I told you Becky was wise. I didn't say smart. There is a difference. And Joyce's fear soon turned to fury. She was effectively split in two for the better half of the morning going into the noon. The first half was so full of love and desperation for her sweet baby boy that she flung open every door in the house like it was a pair of open arms ready to welcome her son back. The second half was a furious woman at the end of her rope who closed every door in her wake and locked it tight, because who did he think he was? And as I said, these two parts were at war. And we went through about 5 rounds of this opening and closing and shutting and locking and throwing, until finally my grandfather Lamar comes up to her and says, Joyce, what are you doing? And Joyce says, I am locking the doors so he cannot come back inside. And Lamar says, Joyce, he's your son. He's 4. You cannot be this mad at him. You cannot lock the doors. And she says, I know, but I'm mad. But she agrees it's too much, and she opens every door in the house for the last time. And it was actually perfect timing too, because at that moment my father rounded the bend, exhausted, cold, worse for wear, and somehow smaller than when he left. And it was true. My grandfather never did realize just how much of a rascal my dad really was. And I think in that moment, Joyce was just too relieved to care to remember. Thank you.
I told you she was good. Now I have a short announcement. My parents, my son, my daughter-in-law, and Lauren have to, because Lauren's twin sister is arriving at San Francisco International Airport after 6 months of studying in Madrid, Spain. And she's arrived. And Lauren didn't even say, can I get out of that? She came anyway. So please let them escape.
Hopefully your traffic is good. Yeah, I hopefully going the other way isn't bad.
Great story. Great story.
Looking forward to more. Hi, Tracy.
I'd like to think I contributed a little bit.
The rope.
I forgot my purse.
Good job. Seize the dawn of every new day. I think that's what our next storyteller does, because he is 50% Californian and 50% whatever you call somebody who lives in Maine. I don't know. Amazing. He is our new webmaster, and he deserves credit. Please welcome John Pitrick.
Thank you very much, Joyce. What a crowd, wow. Well, the theme that Joyce picked this month is looking forward, so I'm sure that after a few minutes, you'll all be looking forward to the next teller. Well, but most of us human beings, one of the things we all look forward to, particularly as young people, is falling in love. And some people fall in love really early, like in high school. And the rest of us look at those people and wonder, will it ever happen to me? And then suddenly, for most of us, it does happen. Somebody actually likes me. And our life changes. That skepticism becomes optimism, becomes planning for the future. Falling in love is so cool. Like that first sip of vintage wine, like that first bite of a great meal. We just savor every flavor, every taste, every smell. Well, that's what happened to Rebecca and I in our mid-20s. But in my mid-30s, I fell in love again. To another that I liked, that I wanted to spend time with, that I looked forward to. I fell in love with downhill skiing. I didn't plan on falling in love. Love is never planned. It always just happens. A friend of ours lent us his condo in Red Lodge, Montana for a weekend. And we just immersed ourselves in Red Lodge, this little town. It's like a half ranch town, half ski town with a few back to nature hippies thrown in. And we went there again and again. And when we were there, we started skiing and we learned to love to ski. Not just me, but my whole family, my wife, my 3 kids. It was just such a great family activity because we all loved it. There was one weekend where the ski patrol had to bring 2 of my kids down the mountain, one with a concussion, but that just added to the family lore. And for me, skiing was just transformational. It was, I'd get off of my stressful job as a lawyer at 4 o'clock. We'd all get in the car. We'd drive these 7 hours to Red Lodge, Montana, white knuckled, blizzard conditions, icy roads. We'd get there in the morning. I'd get the kids up. I'd yell at them, we got to get going, ba, 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 push, 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 push. And then I would get on that lift and my troubles would literally just drift away. Just the beauty of that dark green trees against the white snow, the smell and the feel of that crisp, clean mountain air. It was a drug like no other. And when the lift got to the top, I would start plowing down because I wasn't a very good skier then, but it was the view, the speed, the movement, sharing it with my kids. It was just such a great experience. And one Christmas Eve, we were at Red Lodge, and in the afternoon, the crowd just kind of cleared up. It was almost like we had this whole mountain to ourselves. And there was no wind, and these big white flakes of snow started coming down. And I don't know that I've ever felt beauty like that. But some friends of ours say, well, you got to start skiing at Big Sky. Big Sky has way more runs, way more lifts. It's higher elevation. The snow is always in much better condition. And eventually we abandoned the place of our first love for these better skiing conditions at Big Sky. And Big Sky was where a dent was put in my joy of skiing. It was the last run of the day. And we would always ski from the time the lifts open till the time the lifts close because we love skiing and it's expensive. So we wanted to get our money's worth, right? And the lifts would close at 4 o'clock. So if you got on the lift for your last run at about 10 to 4, you would get to the top of the lift at about 4 and you could get a whole nother run in after the lift's closed. So we'd always choose a really long run for that. Well, this one particular day, my son Will and I were going up for the last run, and we decided we were going to ski the bowl. And the bowl is like it sounds. It's at the top of the mountain, and it's a bowl. It's very steep on the sides, and it flattens out at the bottom. So we get up to the top of the lift, we ski down. There's another smaller lift that goes up to the top of the bowl. And the smaller lift is above the tree line. It's up on the edge of a ridge that overlooks the bowl. So you're going up, there's no shelter, the wind's blowing, you're back and forth, you're looking down at the bowl down there, hundreds of feet below you. It's a scary lift. And we get about halfway up and it starts snowing. And by the time we reach the top of that lift, it is a whiteout. We cannot see 4 feet in front of us. And we've been there, we'd each been there sometimes, not a lot, but we knew at least how to get from the lift over to the lip of the bowl. So we get over to the lip of the bowl and I look down and it looks like it's straight down and all I can see is white. And Will takes off and I'm standing there going, but I know that as a skier on a steep slope, if you can make that first turn, then you can make the rest of the turns because your body movement and your momentum carries you through. So I made that first turn and I made the second turn and I might have made the third turn and the fourth turn. But at some point, I hit something, probably a mogul that I couldn't see in all the white, and I go flying in the air. And next thing I know, I'm going tumbling down the mountain, head over heels. And when I stop, I've probably traveled several hundred yards. I'm like 2/3 of the way down the bowl. And I'm not hurt, but I am totally defeated. I just want to quit. I do not want to move. I just want somebody to come and take care of me. And my ski, one of my skis is like 150 feet above me up on the mountain that I'm going to have to crawl, you know, it's a steep mountain. I'm going to have to crawl on my hands and knees to get back up there in my ski boots. And there's just no way I could do it. I just didn't have the oomph left. I just wanted to be done. I wanted to quit. Luckily, a ski patrol guy comes, gets my ski for me. And eventually I get my ski on and I limp back down to the lodge. But skiing was never the same again. So that honeymoon was over. But I still ski. I still like to ski. I skied last week. I'm probably a better skier now than I was then because I realized that skill is probably more important than just raw enthusiasm. But now, both of my loves, the raw enthusiasm has dissipated. The love is still there, but it's been tempered by some disappointments, some pain, but it's also been polished by some loyalty, some caring. And so there's nothing quite like the flavor of that first bite of love. But time just keeps adding a few more spices to that delectable dish. And so I look forward.
Thank you, John. I was busy. Is Dwight here? Ah, okay. Listen to your inner voice. It's the key to learning when you should move on. And Dwight the Nomad has lived a life of knowing when to move on. Please welcome. Oh, I forgot to tell you, he's never appeared as a storyteller here, always as a poet with his luscious words. Today, he's going to tell us a story. Dwight the Nomad.
Yeah. Oh, looking forward to this. Woo.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh,
Good
good
afternoon.
afternoon. Yeah, they keep me rushing. Happy New Year. Okay, I got that part right now. Happy New Year. So I'm going to tell you about a event that happened to me that I labeled the Great War at Golden Gate Park. The Great Pinecone War at Golden Gate Park. So, to a kid, nothing is more important to them than, well, their neighborhood clubhouse. And our neighborhood clubhouse was in Golden Gate Park. It was a stand of bushes that were about 8 foot tall, and there was a circling of these bushes, and within the middle of it was about 8 foot clearance. And we decided that this spot, which could not be accessed only by a little opening and center that couldn't be seen from the road or the path. Okay, so us kids managed to decide that this was going to be our clubhouse. And even though it wasn't a house, we decided this was going to be our clubhouse. And what we decided to do was to find some furnishings for our clubhouse. And as furnishings, we found some milk crates and that we used as seats. And there was a rug remnant. I don't remember where we got this, but we drug it up there and we, flattened it out and stole some pillows out of a couple of houses. My mom, donated the house. She didn't know she was donating. She gave us and this was our spot. Okay, now as sparse or as homely this little spot was, it was beautiful according to us. This was our clubhouse. Now, a few days later, this event happened. All right. We had went around the neighborhood and we collected pop bottles. In the old days, you collect pop bottles, and we collected up enough pop bottles to buy some Galileo Galileo salami slices, and we had rode our bikes over to our spot. Okay, um, it was Terry, Diane, Carl, my sister Faye, and I. Okay, we had rode our bikes over there, and we had intended on just hanging out and enjoying our Galileo salami slices. But when we got there, we were surprised to find that there were 3 other kids sitting on our spot. Now, I don't know how they found the spot. All I know is that they were invading our little secret spot space, okay? And so we decided to eject them by throwing some pine cones in there. And of course, while we were throwing those pine cones, maybe some cursing took place. I'm not clear on it. But actually, these guys decided to exit. And as they exited, they decided that there should be a war going on. And so they in turn threw some pine cones back at us. And the gauntlet was thrown down. Okay. And so as they ran off, we decided that, we needed to get ready for what was coming forward. So what we did was to spend the next hour or so collecting some ammunition in the form of pine cones. All right. We didn't want to hurt nobody, so there was no rocks. Okay. We didn't really want to kill anybody. We just wanted to make sure that they knew we meant business. Don't be coming back here in our spot. All right. So that's what we did for that day. Took about an hour and a half or so, and we sat down and we had our Galileo salami slices and discussed how we were going to handle this business coming forward. Well, the very next day, those boys returned. This time there was three of them. I mean, excuse me, there was four of them, but there was only three of us because the girls wanted no parts of a pine cone war, all right? But nevertheless, we were ready to get them, okay? And so when we saw them coming, we, made our little war cry. Hey! And they were surprised and they looked, and we were throwing out these pine cones at them. We were throwing out the pine cones, and it looked good until they started gathering up the pine cones and throwing them back at us. Okay, so I believe this war took about a half an hour or so, but in the throes of the battle, it always seems like it's a whole lot longer. Nevertheless, somewhere during the battle, well, I got a direct hit straight in and cracked my tooth, right? But that was not the end of the war, see, because we were not going to give up that easily and just kept on going. And sooner or later, those guys, they retreated, all right? And we never saw them again. That was great. It was great. We had won the war. It was yay, yay. All right. And so that day finally passed and it was time to go home. We got on our bicycles and rode off, and it was a beautiful thing according to us. However, that very next day when we returned, all of our stuff was gone. Our little clubhouse was cleared out by what I believe was the park keepers, the guys who cleaned up around there and stuff. And so that was extremely sad. And that was the end of our clubhouse. And so the moral of this story is nobody wins at the end of war.
Thank you very much. All right. Stay in motion is the key to chasing your dreams. I'd like to welcome our next storyteller, although he's not going to be a storyteller today. Today, he is going to be a poet. He's also one of our new executive board members, and he's a storyteller and a poet of A+ quality. Being a professor, he'll appreciate that grade. Please welcome Manuel Camacho.
I like that A+. I love it. I love it. I write in Spanish, and then I translate my own work. And sometimes it might lose its musicality, but the essence is there. So. Since this is the poetry section, I'm going to read a poem that is dedicated to poetry. And the title of the poem is "Today Everything is Fashionable Except Poetry." Okay. It goes like this. Today, everything is fashionable except poetry. Fashionable is politics, always simmering as one of nature's elements. Fashionable are dirty politics, the plutocrat, the fraudulent, radical politics, the extreme right, the nationalist, the utopian, the chaotic, the politics of fear. Fashionable is the religion, honor of souls, that deafens and drowns reasoning. Fashionable is the religion of hate, of extermination, the blind religion, the interventionist, the occupier, of complicity, of lies, of omission. Fashionable is war, the only incurable disease. Fashionable is the war against terrorism, the war against drugs, the dirty war against corruption, against truth, war against poverty, war against women, war against education, contamination, discrimination, racism, and freedom of expression. Fashionable are feminicides whose silence prevails as if meaningless. Fashionable is domestic abuse, its torture, state assassinations, police brutality, the disappeared, political prisoners, the migrants, the refugees, the exiles, the uprooted, the undocumented, the deported. Fashionable are pedophiles with the Vatican's blessing, the pedophiliacs, the homophobes, the xenophobia, the misogyny, sexual harassment. Fashionable is exploitation, tax evasion, the fiscal paradises, electoral frauds, bulletless coup d'etats, territorial invasions, ethnic cleansings, the suicide bombings. Fashionable is global warming and end of times omens. Fashionable are tsunamis, earthquakes, forest fires and hurricanes, flooding and landslides, oil spills and fracking. Fashionable are millennium walls, destined to become archaeological zones. Fashionable are kilometrical walls, electrical walls, double walls, threatening walls, unscrupulous walls, invisible walls, and gated communities. Fashionable are social movements displayed like Olympic Games or World Cups. Fashionable is feminism, civil rights, the anti-arms race, ecology, the works, the Occupy, the anti-globalization, and Black Lives Matter movements. Fashionable are the recyclable dictatorships like toilet paper. Fashionable are the democratic dictatorships, the monarchical ones, the oligarchical, the communist, the fascist, the capitalistic, the neoliberal, the corporatist, the partisan, and the fundamentalistic. Fashionable are addictions like divine canopy. Fashionable is the addiction to heroin, the addiction to cocaine, the addiction to nicotine, addiction to narcotics, the addiction to alcohol, the addiction to touch screens, the addiction to social networks. Fashionable are the massacres that have become the news of the day. Fashionable are massacres of workers, of farm workers, of miners. Fashionable are massacres of indigenous people, of dissidents, of students, of teachers, intellectuals, poets. Today, everything is fashionable except poetry. This next poem is dedicated to those who take naps. All right. It's titled Peace. Peace confuses me. So many symbols, so many characters that clamor for it. War breaks out in front of our noses. Exploitation overwhelms. The illustrious mandataries show their fangs and destroy at their pleasure. Women kept falling like leaves adrift, trampled in muddy blood. The children stroll headless, their lungs exploding overflowed among falsified images. Hunger plays hide and seek. It shows playful its swollen cheeks like poisonous chocolate. Yoga dresses up in silk, hides its organic contortions in childlike contemplation. The young virgins rule the dissolutions. They cry their misfortunes, chained to the altars behind hesitant flames. At night, the mosquitoes sing their discord in the ears. The dogs dance the devil with the devil, the moon dance. Some drunk breaks another bottle. The swallows arise the dawn, becoming hoarse on purpose. The tamales man appropriates the morning, hugs dozens of green red tamales. Traffic battles the pulse. The brain bubbles like lava. And the woman of my dreams always scares away my nap. Peace confuses me. This next poem is titled The Spiders. Modern dictators are spiders. I hate spiders. Let's eradicate them. They are grotesque, repugnant, hurtful. They are Satan's henchmen. They drag themselves in filth, claiming the wall like suicide stains, flying unnoticed like clouds out of orbit. I ask, what is their destiny? What is their purpose? Would it be a despicable deed conceived in a military encampment? They monitor us from their hideout like disposable tiny drones. They are everywhere, stalking, spreading horrific terror when they keep watch and remain still. They weave their poisonous web in secret to pounce in their game. They have sequestered our voices. We are trapped in their webs. We are shattering captives. The spiders have kidnapped freedom. The spiders have besieged freedom. The spiders suck our blood drop by drop. The chains of silence link together and the invisible torture asphyxiates us. Freedom vanishes between all wars and infinite walls. It is imperative to rescue freedom. The spiders are not freedom's masters. Let's invade their hideouts, remove them and burn them in the sun. Let them go back to their evil caverns, made of defecated ashes. Let's declare war against them, kill them without pity, combating them till the end. Spiders don't resist cannon shots from a vacuum or a millennial shoot. Let them be another impregnated stain on the ground again, and have them go to the emptiness of oblivion. Freedom deserves it. Freedom demands it. Let spiders become extinct. Thank you. This next poem is called Crazy Moon. The moon is not silent. It is loud. It laughs out loud when it sees us dancing on a placid river bank or among the multitude or at a carnival. Our golden walks through the streets flooded by murals and blinking flowers bowing to your hair of poppies. It rejoices in our walk on the beach, where it signals the abyss beyond the horizon in flames. Sometimes it is sad for the schizophrenic political actions that vomit the putrefied vileness in their genes. It does not comprehend the lust from the obstinate that enjoys the pain from the children in cages. It does not comprehend the exiled orphan that stopped existing behind the wall. Thank you. This next poem is called Poetry's Assassin. Poetry's assassin was born one day, impregnated with malice, and initiated the task of eradicating perfection gathered in syllables. The sun was blinded, terrified, precipitated in the horizon to hide its light. The assassin searched the poetic voices interwoven in the wind, but it found the ferocious hurricane snarling, pounding him, with florid rain's whippings, at the clouds' laughter blowing with the rifle's butts lightning. The assassin searched harmonious poetic compositions in high and low tides, waves of harps and sirens' moans. The infuriated sea expelled him like a putrefied waste in a tsunami of contempt. The assassin searched in the soil, the trees rustling and the flowers whispering that sing to sleep the nocturne hours. The exalted telluric forces provoking an earthquake, devouring the enemy to the depths of hell, masticating between the molars of lava. The volcano vomited him like a sterile gene. The assassin searched in the metropolis. He made alliances with dictators and other perverse delinquents. His eyes stretched the mantle's intolerant shadow. He silenced some singers and dissidents. He bragged of being magnanimous and invincible. But the poetry assassin, in his persecutor's fixation, nature fell heavily on him. The wind stabbed him without truce. The sea slaughtered him without clemency. Earth embedded him in the caverns of the poets, pulverized him like a clod of sand. The assassin prosecuted now, without destiny, searched the refuge in the abyss. Time repudiated his presence, immobile, disillusioned, and lacking hope. The poetry's assassin that one day decided to destroy the entire beauty committed suicide. This next poem, I'm going to ask you to listen till the end. Do not react until the very end. You're going to hear a word, huarache. Huarache is a type of Mexican sandal. You're going to hear that word. The title of this poem is I Killed Her. Yes, I killed her. I don't regret it. I did it with stealth, without arousing suspicions. I besieged her without time noticing, with feline instinct in the imperturbable silence of a macabre night. I did not attack immediately like canines do, ferociously announcing themselves, barking and frightening their prey away till it escapes. I took my time. I kept watch on her. Each morning I saw her from afar, and I think she observed me, immobile, cautious. Suddenly she disappeared like part of some plan that she interweaved each night like an automaton. She sheltered happily in that corner she had claimed as always hers. She was repugnant. I could no longer stand her. I pounced on her to strike. I cornered her in an act of surprise. I slashed her veins first to debilitate her. She attempted to run and become diluted among the shadows, but I dragged her towards me to torture her. She writhed desperately. She screamed perhaps with a drowned voice. Suddenly she fixed her eyes on me and remained still, like an inner being that fakes its own death when it intends to block the irreverent blows. Ill-fated, like mullets crashing against the concrete. I knew she was still alive. I knew her dirty tricks. Having her at my mercy, I accelerated the denouement. I killed her. I stepped on her without compassion, with my huarache made from wireless tires. I just remember a brief and slippery creak. There remained the spider, smeared upon the floor, like an undesirable and orphan gob of spit. She deserved it, you know. Oh, you were thinking. Okay, one more. This is dedicated to a tooth. It's called Because of a Tooth. I have stopped eating pumpkin seeds because of a naughty tooth. They won't whisper sweet nothings to the central incisors nor the molars. With their seductive crack, 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 the sweet salt on their pregnant shells. We leave them heartbroken, as a sepulchral abyss will remain. Let the tooth rest in peace. Oh, how I will miss you. You accompanied me 5 decades, demolishing uncertainty, unhealthy calamities, despicable food, murderous candy, witness to endless vulgarities. Oh, but exhausted and weak, you opted for living in abandonment and collapsed miserably between the assassin forceps of a dentist dressed as doctor. Now my health is in danger because of you, ungrateful traitor, have left me questioning. How would I extract from the alkalinized action that lowers acidity in tissue and blood? Where would I extract from the fiber that fights intestinal parasites? How could I prevent diabetes? We must know that the little green ovals is an anti-inflammatory agent. It contains irreplaceable minerals, zinc, calcium, magnesium, properties that prevent the vial osteoporosis. Its flavor does not tire you out. It is seductive. It alleviates the heartbreaking anxiety. It alleviates the cold and incredible depression. It alleviates the inconsiderate insomnia. It contains antitoxins and it is elixir. It reduces bad cholesterol and lowers the risk of getting cancer. And because of you, ungrateful tooth, I will have to leave them. The poor pumpkin sits alone. Now, what's left? What can I do? I will have to eat pistachios. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manuel. Okay, well, I'm going to take a little time for you to relax. Talk about Sacramento Storytelling Guild Workshop. It's on February the 22nd. It's called Enhancing Your Storytelling with Movement, presented by Joyce Orman and Karen Daly. There are handouts over there, and the instructions are on here. And with that, I'd like to introduce Karen Daly to tell you about our festival.
Hello, everybody. You probably have heard we've announced it at every time, but we are having our storytelling festival. It's going to be in March this year. We've switched and it's going to be on March 15th in the same location as last year in West Sacramento at the community center. All the information and the tickets are $25, which is a great price for what you're getting, and we go all the way from noon to 5 o'clock. So for a half day of storytelling, that's a terrific price. And let me give you a little hint of our storytelling. First of all, we have 2 featured speakers. Willie Claflin, most of people know, usually with children's stories. But he's going to come this year and he's going to do adult stories. So I'm really looking forward to that. And our second featured speaker is Ethnotech. And Ethnotech is a husband and wife that do presentations and they work off of each other. But the both times I have seen them, and I don't know, Ed may know, they've always had someone else that they have worked with that they brought in for a third person to tell the stories. And so it really makes it interesting because it's 2 or 3 people telling the same story with different gestures. They're just terrific. And then we have 6 regional tellers. We have Dave Tarvin, which you've probably heard a few times, Tom Wade, who is now told, I don't know if he tells internationally, but I know he speaks throughout the United States. Sarah Armstrong, who is with the Storytellers Association of California, SAC, and Norm Breaker. And Norm has just moved into our area. He is the storytelling that is known nationally and international, but he's just moved up to Chico to be closer to his family, which we have worked out because now he said he will come and be a storyteller for ourselves. Ben Tucker, you heard before, Alicia Redes. And so we just have a terrific program, and I hope that you will consider that. If you want to buy your ticket today, thank you, Suzanne, our newest member of our board, printed a few tickets, so we already have a few tickets if you want to buy your ticket for $25. And we're printing 500 of these posters. So we will have those for you next time if you have places that you want to put it, maybe at your workplace or your lunchroom or something. And I have a few that we are going to pass out to the board members. So have a wonderful time. Let's take a break and let's eat.
No, we have John Petrick to tell us about February.
Oh, that's right.
Thank you, Joyce. Just to follow up on the festival, as I think Joyce introduced me as the new webmaster, I'm very bad at it so far, but what I hope to have on our website next week is a button that you can get your tickets for the festival. So that's my goal for next week, to get that on the website. But I'm here to announce that our February program, which is, I believe, February 15th.
Yep.
And the theme is Books/National Library Month. We have our tellers lined up. We have 2 brand new people, one of them who has a lot of theater experience, so I'm looking forward to hearing him. And Andy is trying to help me get a couple poets, and the last ones he talked to have some incredible credentials, so I'm hoping they're going to accept. So February 15th here is our February show. Thank you.
Now, if there are no other announcements, we have about Suzanne?
Online right now and then right up.
Okay, you're going to be next. Will you announce that? Okay. Please help yourself. And Vicky is our wonderful hostess.
Yeah.
The biggest crowd ever.
Yeah, I think this is our largest.
Well, yeah.
You know,
There was one time. We didn't see any accident, we didn't see anything, but we were in bumper to bumper.
Oh,
for
I know.
10 miles.
You dropped something. Yeah, even Mark Barry said he had trouble getting there. He left early.
He's coming from there, isn't he?
Yeah.
But yes, I'm doing well. And love would love to set something up. I need to, because I didn't. Well, and now I've heard about the strength and so I'm thinking if I work on my strength
Yeah, so yeah, that's. It says, yeah. So, and I have my book. I have my book, but I also have my, the notebook we were, I was taking notes with and stuff like that, so, yeah. Just read that notebook. Yeah. I love it. Yes. Amazing things. He's teaching all the love for professional development. Hey, beautiful. We have been this together. Yeah. I text you and invited you now. Oh. But you already talking. Thank you. You know, see you. For the panels, their panels. Oh, you're paying. Okay. One of those bags. That Bayside. Our best is good run. Yeah. The modern. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just gonna.
Have you been here before?
No, I don't just talk about. It also happening on Tuesday. Well, the rivalry. Yeah. Well, the Saturday. Round table.
We gotta think about it. Not just about it.
No, I have.
Well, you find it fine.
We all have positions.
Yeah, he's he was board president. At least for.
I have just in case you take pictures at your
Only here we do. Nowhere else.
Someone that's really down back in 2007, got no home rule as far as game. Yeah, and so we can see them. And silver. That's the bell train. That's the bell train. But she helped develop the training course that is constant. So some of the volunteers ended up being directed to constant as a result of the yeah, so it was so cool to get that. I've been hired to do some work, and so I've been doing research. Remember, I actually got the so she engaged so that so what I'm going to do like it turned to me and get it for research. So when you know that program.
So are you guys poets? Are you part of the poetry society?
My first time.
How do you hear about this? How do you hear about it? Oh, I don't know. She was the poetry. Oh. I wonder if you've ever been here. We always have a couple poems. Okay, well, that's all right.
It was definitely an area that I wanted to elevate. So
Well, I'm so glad that we connected with the poetry center. Because normally in storytelling, there's no poetry. It's strictly storytelling. And like, I'm on the board of the Storytelling Association in California. There's 17 story swap groups around California. that put on monthly events like this, but we're the only one because they didn't make the poetry. And we do all kinds of training. So we gotta think about sharing some poems there, right?
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'm gonna grab some.
Talk to Karen. Karen's now our board president. Or Joyce, give her your information. Tell her if you're available, if you really want to do it. And you know how it goes. We have 3 people every time. We're always looking. Oh, no.
Yeah.
For sure.
She, she's.
No, we just have to remember it. Did you go live? Yeah, I love it. You on open mic that we have the year, you doing that the first one?
I know I didn't tell here.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. I mean, now I can't remember. I did tell here.
That has been a long.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. Was John. You have the flyer over there. There's a flyer.
Jenna's, J-E-N-S-S-O. Oh, that's Go here,
This is just. But not until the very end.
Yeah.
So I don't get to go, but until the very end, then they can go in. But I'm not.
Oh,
Until, you know, I said, oh, I can't remember if I forget it or not. I don't know it.
yeah. I think it's probably the best about money can be used to plan, right?
Yeah.
Everything like the last one. How many? Yes. I'll be there for sure.
Oh, yeah. Saturday. We just have She is there. Come this way. And all the other kids were, you know. She was looking up. With she was in college. And then only one of these came out.
Public community radio station, and they have a translator in Sacramento. Several different. Yes, we have callers call in to read their poetry on the air.
My daughter.
Really, to the poet? It was fun. It was stressful. I used to have recurring nightmares for years. I had nightmares that I got locked out of the recording booth, and monkeys were in there destroying everything, and I was locked out while they were on the air. I went away to college. I say fucking up high school. I was lucky. I got a broadcast license before I got my driver's license. Weird. You could brush off the dust on something. Yeah, you know, then you good strategy there.
We'll put you on our list.
Okay, hit the record button. Hit the record button.
Okay. Well, the packet is coach. Oh, so
Everybody, please return to your seats.
Use that when you were in school?
yes, it was.
Yes.
No, it was Georgia.
Use that when she was. Yeah.
When you were a teacher?
Yeah.
I need everybody back in them seats so we can finish on time.
Well, she did the first, as we remember, is, the last story.
Okay. Dan, are we back?
I'm here. No,
If you start all over.
recording in progress.
Okay,
It was.
Okay.
The full time.
what?
It had been recording the whole time.
Oh, I goofed.
I have to do a little editing.
It said stop. It said stop recording. You better check it.
I thought I paused, I clicked the pause button.
Yeah, but it just came up and said stop recording.
Yeah, but it just said recording again now, so,
Okay.
okay. I want you to look at, while we're getting started, this beautiful poster with information on the back and your programs with beautiful work on it. We owe that to Suzanne LaCour, who is our next storyteller. So persist and persevere on the path of life, and you will understand when you hear her story. I look at the programs. She is a creative genius. She is a graphic artist. She is an artisan. She runs her own company. She teaches art online. And she is now becoming a storyteller, and a very good one also. Please welcome Suzanne LaCour.
Say my name is Suzanne, and then people think Suzanne. Is that how is that spelled? They go off and I just say Suzanne, like shoes on, or you say lights on, but I just think shoes on is funny. And if I'm barefoot, you'll never remember my name. So that's true. But I didn't even know storytelling was a thing because it's just things that I always told. I just told stories. I mean, I grew up telling stories, and the very first thing that I knew was when I was 5 years old. My mom said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "I'm being an artist." She said, "You can't be an artist because artists starve." Now she's from the Depression and people died. They didn't eat. They couldn't pay their rent. They didn't even have a place to live often. They were destitute. There were very few successful artists. So myself being an artist, I knew that I was an artist like I knew I was a girl. So I had to figure out how to start making money. I had to figure out how to not ever starve. So I started eating double. I was a skinny little kid, twigs. And my dad could pick me up by the ankles and lift me up at 5 years old. And I had no balance, so I was really always teetering. But that's another part of my story, balance. So there is no real balance in my life. And that's because I found out 2 years ago that I was diagnosed with MS. And MS is a immune deficiency disease. It attacks your brain, your spinal cord, and your optic nerves. So basically I could go blind anytime. I've been in a wheelchair before. I've used a cane for months and months and months, actually probably years. I've done all of these different things, but that's not who I am. So looking forward, I have a lot to look forward to. But first, I want to talk to you about looking backwards a little bit to kind of give you an idea of who I am and why I'm here and why I want to tell stories. So I grew up around a table in the evenings that my families and friends would come together and they would just share stories. My father, when he passed away, his funeral was 3 hours long because people kept getting up to tell stories about my dad. He was an amazing storyteller. And he would hit the table real hard and he'd say, "Woo!" really loud. And he always catch people's attention. And I don't usually do that, but it is kind of fun in front of the microphone on Zoom. Hello, everybody. But I also want to tell you that I have some items that I'm very proud of. I'm one of the very first food recyclers. When I was 16, I had a job at McDonald's. Hi, welcome to McDonald's. Can I take your order? And they would tell me what they wanted, and and I fulfill it and put it in the bag, take it out of the chute of all the hamburgers that came down the line. They would come down, and they have a little number in front of it, and if it said number 10, that meant at 12:10 we had to throw that food away. Well, I decided I want to be the person that throws that food away. I want to be the waste tracker. And why? Because I wasn't going to waste that food. I was going to recycle it back into my pocket. I went to the bag, and it was my job. 3 Big Macs, check. Put them in the bag. I put them in a bag, the big giant McDonald's bag that they had then. I don't know why they don't have those anymore, because anyway, another story. But I would put them in the bag. I would take them home into my little studio apartment. By the way, when I was 16, I moved out. And that was because my brother liked to try to hurt me, and he strangled me with a telephone cord. And that was enough. I moved out when I was 16. Plus, I had to feed 26 dogs a day. And it turns out later I found out I was allergic to dogs. Again, another story. But, so people say, "Oh, come on over to my house." And I'm like, "Hey." And then I go home and use my inhaler 12 times. And then I'm like, I think I'm going to just pass on that. But I divert. Okay, so back to McDonald's hamburger slots. I was taking the hamburgers home, putting them in my little microwave in the morning, and a Big Mac in a styrofoam container would become a Big Mac. And for $1.22, you could get one through drive-through at McDonald's. But for $1 in the back of my Vega at 6:30 in the morning, farm workers, come on over. So I would drive my car, but before school out, because again, I live 12 miles from school. When I drove out into the country on the roads, and the farm workers lined up, they couldn't wait. And I had in the back of my car, I had filet of fish, warm, Big Macs, completely rubbery, I'm sure, quarter pounders with cheese, but they were all $1. $1 line my pockets. And I made so much money selling hamburgers, I would take extra shifts to close because I wanted to take home more hamburgers. I wrote myself a note from my teacher, and I signed her name to McDonald's saying it's part of her work study program. She can work an extra 6 hours a week. I did all kinds of things that you should probably not do. And knowing now about food safety and all of that, probably wouldn't have done that, but didn't know that then. Also didn't know about my microwaving styrofoam containers, or the hazards of driving a Vega. So the back of my Vega, it was an altar to feed the hungry. I was so excited to get to share, and especially Lima dollars. Lima dollars. I made so much money. I also, because I was an artist and I was going to start, I had a gambling casino at the back of the school. And it was a $5 buy-in for the week. And the house always won. And guess who was the house? Me. I carried a roulette wheel. I carried this roulette wheel on number 19 black as I walked through the campus. And people would always wonder where we were going. There's like 6 of us that we would go to the back of the school and we would play roulette. But if I spun the wheel really lightly, the ball would always land on the black 19. So I would always when, and I would split it. Anyway, I had a little side hustle going on. Another story. But again, survival, because I'm an artist. So jump ahead to college. I wanted to share with you that in 1986, I believe, there was a huge flood in Linda, Marysville, California. Huge flood. Thousands of people displaced. People lost their homes. And I wanted to do something. I'm in art school in the Bay Area. I'm like, I'm going to do something. I'm going to try to help. I don't know how I can help. I cleaned out the church pews and just removed tons of what looked like turds, but it turned out it was a chocolate chip cookie drive that they had the week before. And then the freezer had tipped over and cookies had flown all over. So it looked just like piles of turds all over the church pews. So I'm trying to clean it up. I'm like, no, there's got to be something better that I can do. So I thought, oh, I'm going to be a clown. I'll be a clown for the National Guard. I mean, not National Guard, but for the Red Cross. So I didn't have a costume. And I went back to my mom and dad's house and I said, can I use your sewing machine? Sure. So I took a bed sheet and I cut out this giant pair of clown pants. And I put I put a wire like from coat hangers in the circle. And then they were just too bland. So I decided to paint images all over them. And it's just squares, shapes, colors, whatever that might be, kind of like Ed's shirt. But not as attractive as Ed's shirt, of course. And I would go to the school in Wheatland, which is where one of the evacuation centers were. And there are all these children, and I'm there to cheer them up. I am going to make them part of Bobo's Fan Club. And I would take my L'Oreal lipstick and hit their nose with the top of their nose with red lipstick, and then they could be part of my fan club. And we decided as an art project that we would make their house. So we took the Matchbox people had, I don't know if you remember what Matchboxes looked like, but they're just little tiny cardboard boxes and the stripe on the side. But we took those empty ones and we painted them the colors of their houses, told them to decorate it like their house. And then we made clay, and we made a clay levee that wound around the school driveway, basically. And we placed their homes next to the levee that we had just made with clay. And then we cut a hole where the levee would break. And then I turned the hose on it. Yeah, I'm sure these kids are still in therapy. Sorry about that, kids. But when I got done with it all and I felt like I had, served my community, I went back to school and I took these pants and I'm like, you know what? These are really nice pants, but I'm not going to wear these big giant round. And I managed a large size clothing store in San Francisco, a high-end boutique. Like the average thing there was like $500. I mean, the average. And I took the wire out of the pants, put in elastic around and tightened them up and wore those. And it was a fashion statement. Everybody wanted a pair of these. And my boss came up to me and said, Suzanne, if you can make these, you can sell them in our store. So what did I want to charge? $1? No, $100. I charged $100 for them. I found a seamstress that could make them. I bought really nice silk fabrics. We made all of these beautiful pants. I sold them to San Francisco Metropolitan Opera. 3 weeks after their first show, where the women were all wearing my pants because they were stretchable, they went to any size. There happened to be a lot of people that were a little bit more robust, if you will. MC Hammer went to that show before he was famous. MC Hammer bought my pants. I invented MC Hammer's pants. I did. I am the inventor of MC Hammer's pants. I know, but you don't copyright that stuff. I was studying marketing school, but it never really occurred to me that these would take off the way they did. And so pretty soon I'm so mad. So mad. I went to Hard Rock Cafe 20 years ago or 20 years later, and they had MC Hammer pants framed. And I sat right next to it and I fucked it. Just fucked it, fucked it, fucked it. It's like, you know what? And then when it came back where he's got the command strips commercials and he became all the rage again, I'm like, come on, seriously? I thought I was getting over it. Turns out, no, I didn't get over it. But, you know, I bought the command strips and tried to tear those suckers apart. You can't really tear them apart. They're pretty indestructible, actually. But going back to the MS diagnosis, it's not, I mean, it's a terrible disease. There's no cure for it. They don't even know what causes it. But there are medications that they can give you to slow it down. Again, like I mentioned, I was in a wheelchair. Didn't know what the heck I had. I had no balance. In high school, when they said walk across the balance beam, the 3-foot high balance beam, you will get an A. I couldn't do it. Walk across the 2-inch balance beam and you'll get a C. I couldn't do it. So my teacher felt so sorry for me. She gave me a C+ because I tried that 2-inch balance beam every day. But going forward in my life, I am now, my ex-husband, who is this terrible, terrible husband, my son's father, works for United Airlines, and I keep asking him to marry me again because I want his flight benefits. As he works for United. Last week, he gave me his flight benefits. So travel is in my near future. And looking forward, I've got my dream board, my vision boards, because I teach those classes. I make my own vision boards. I make them probably, it looks like a little psychotic in my house right now, with all my vision boards. But I am going to New York. I'm going to New Orleans. I'm going to New Mexico. And why? Because they all have the word new in them. Because I think if that should just be crossed off the list. Now, New Jersey did not make the list, sorry to say. I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't, but because, you know, something could be like, oh, you're so close. But anyway, I'm just saying that I am not defined by my disease. I'm defined by my future, and my future is unlimited. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Suzanne. Now, I have a very special poet to introduce you to. He's Patrick Brazell, and he's the man in charge of the Sacramento Poetry Center. And we couldn't do a minute's worth without him. And his luscious words will flow through to your ears. Patrick.
Okay. So. Nice. You guys are all good. I don't remember anything. Phone number, maybe. That's it. I'm gonna read a couple of things, but I was thinking about the theme. I didn't have anything with the theme. But I just had a kind of a dark thought, which is that one of the things that we're celebrating at the Poetry Center this year is 45 years since we started it. Yeah, I was there. I was there and I was hoping I was gone forever, but I had to come back because it was in trouble. Anyway, we're celebrating people who came and helped us in the very beginning in different ways. Either they were part of the board, they were teachers, they were mentors, they were people that we looked forward to. All of the people on this wall are gone. Some in the last couple of years even. That seems to be accelerating as we all get to a certain age, you know, more and more of our peers kind of check out. So that's one thing we can all look forward to. All of us, everyone. It is forward, you know, maybe not in the most positive way, but anyway, so yeah. And I thought, you know, like one of the things I wanted to read anyway was this. These are little memoir pieces. I'm going to read two. This one is called The Time of Death. And this is, I noticed when I pulled it out this morning, it's almost 10 years ago. It's 10 years ago as of the 28th of January that this was written. One of the people mentioned in it is Jose Montoya, who was recently died, and that was 2013. Late yesterday afternoon, just when I'd finished cleaning up the giant mess of branches and leaves left in the front yard after my buddy Steve Bird climbed up and dropped a lot of dead and rotting limbs from the tops of the white birches, a slow black car pulled up in front of my house. As a smoky window rolled down, the smiling face of my old friend and former neighbor, Peter Getter, emerged. I was happy to see him. We caught up a bit and I asked about his parents, wonderful people who kept a big garden, turning their suburban yard into a little farm. I remember how one morning his mother, Ludmilla, proud of her few words of English, standing in her yard across the street in front of the house where 3 generations lived. Every inch the babushka, with her apron and scarf and long roomy dress and big muddy shoes, with her arms outstretched, enthusiastically exclaiming, "Good morning, my wonderful neighbor." Her rolling R's were like a feast. We managed with our language barrier to convey all we needed. My leaves for your chicken scratch? Sure. Thank you for the beautiful tomatoes. Yes, you can use my drill. Did you leave that bag of plums on my porch? Would you like these guavas? It worked. His father, Yevgeny, died not long ago from just having lived a long time. His brother, Yuri, too young, had died from cancer. It has been a time of death, Peter says, with that easy, unassuming gravitas that I've come to learn to love about my Russian friends, and it has been. I tell him our old neighbor Louis had died. Others come to mind. I remember Beulah Dunbar, the original owner of the house, who had become as much of a grandmother to me as I ever had, and who lived a long time, and how my father always said he hoped he outlived her because he knew she would be too sad if he died first. I tell Peter I think of his family often, especially sometimes when I sit at my desk, which faces a window with his old house as the view, and which was salvaged from their gardening shed when they were moving out. The drawers were littered with all sorts of loose seeds and peas and bits of straw and small chicken feathers. A big sturdy aquarium tank stand from their dining room now holds my firewood. It's where the birch logs will go. We talk a bit more and then he has to leave. He's coming back soon to have more talk and whiskey, as we often did when he lived here. He's learning to garden on a larger scale and raise livestock up in Newcastle these days with his wife Lilia and their little brood. We hug a farewell. He gets into his car with its dark windows and drives away. The sun was going down by then, so I gathered up my tools, eyeballed the last few large uncut limbs I'd set aside, and remembered Harry, who I called the strongest man in the world for being able to rock a tenacious palm stump free after 3 of us had failed to even budget, and who wept uncontrollably when his daughter Natalie married my good friend Vitaly, standing in my yard with a few other Russian men talking one summer day. Looking up at the birch trees, he began to sing a song in Russian, a folk song about how the birch forests of Russia symbolize their mothers. It's a song they all know, I'm told. His big voice breaking, tears streamed down his face as he sang, and then down the faces of the other Russian men standing around, including my friend Victor, father of the groom, and then me, even though I didn't understand a word, but I felt it, that easy gravitas again. This morning, I went out with my bow saw and finished cutting the biggest limbs while thinking of the good fires they'll make, and of good friends who are here and gone, and old songs, and Pete Seeger, and Louis, and Yevgeny, and Jose Montoya, and trees, and all the things that live a long, good life whistling the whole time. My arms were a little sore from yesterday's work, but with such company, the cutting was easy. Thank you. And then the strongest man in the world thing reminded me of another story, which is similar. Cosmo Zukor. There was a guy I knew, Al Cosmo Zukor, he used to come into the bookstore down on the mall. We called him the pirate because he had a shaved head and a big loop earring before those things had become commonplace for most men. He wasn't very tall, short even. But he had a weightlifter's build, barrel chested with biceps like hams and tough looking, walked slowly like he never needed to walk fast. He wore jeans and a tight t-shirt and combat boots, had a long pointy nose and beady eyes, but was handsome in an unusual, compelling way, and had a truly bright smile once he let you see it. Often he had a large buck knife and a scabbard on his belt, and always carried an ominous briefcase that didn't seem to suit his look. Sometimes a plain black leather business looking one, sometimes one of those riveted aluminum cases that seemed more like a military gear case. He became a regular. And over time, we had great conversations. And after a while, comfortable, he finally showed me what was in the briefcases. Sometimes a set of dangerous looking military survival knives, sometimes handcuffs, sometimes nickel plated pistols, sometimes martial arts knives and throwing stars. He was into training security people in weapons use and martial arts and brokering guard dogs, as well as selling weapons to security companies. This guy was a trip. He bought mysteries and poetry, the latter getting my interest. Turns out he was married actually to a local poet who came by the Poetry Center once in a while. I can see her face, but the fog of time has removed her name. Eventually, we ended up talking about Kerouac and the Beats, a shared interest, but his, as it turns out, was more personal. He had great wild stories. Said he was a jazz clarinet player who worked in the clubs around San Francisco in the 50s and 60s, often up in North Beach, and had met Kerouac a few times, and most of the Beats many times, had hung out with them and considered them good friends. He also said that despite Jack's reveries about cheering on the jazz players with enthusiastic shouts, most of them wished he'd just stop yelling, shut up, and enjoy the music. He also told me that he had been Allen Ginsberg's roommate in North Beach for a while. The stories were rich and detailed, but my bullshit antenna was up. And I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. Each tale led to another, and they were all consistent. And after a while, I just accepted that it was probably all true, though I still had some lingering doubt. But I liked the guy a lot. We met for coffee now and then, always a good conversation. Okay, then it happened. Once, when I was going to do a reading with Allen Ginsberg at the Palms in Davis, I tell Cosmo about it and invited him to come. He said, well, I'd like to, but I'm going to be out of town and couldn't come, but asked me to say hello to Allen for him. Of course, I thought, well, of course you can't go. You know, of course you're going to be out of town because you don't know the guy. And then that'll be the tail of the tape, won't it? Okay. Talking with Alan before the reading, I said, hey, by the way, Cosmo Zukor says hello. He looked at me kind of puzzled, and he said, Cosmo Zukor? I said, yeah, Al Zukor. He shook his head a little bit and repeated, not as a question, but as an amused recognition. Cosmo Zukor. A pause, a breath, then, is he still the strongest man in the world? And I knew at that moment it was all true. I laughed out loud and the whole thing turned from apocrypha to history. And I told Alan an abbreviated version of some of the Cosmos stories, and he seemed to really enjoy hearing them, seemed even a little saddened by them in that nostalgic way that overtakes us sometimes when we look at ourselves in the past and we mused over the small world cliche. Last I saw of Cosmo, he and his wife were moving up to Seattle, late 80s, early 90s, around there. He came to say adios. We promised to keep in touch, but we didn't. Can't find hide nor hair of him now, a cold trail. He was much older than me, so maybe he's no longer among us, but I'm glad we crossed paths. I'll never forget him or the first time he opened up one of those goddamn briefcases.
Okay, now we have one of our most recognized regional tellers, and in the special storyteller, Mark Berry. You're in for a treat. Welcome.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Sacramento Storytelling Guild and everybody that works so hard to put these together, to allow us to get together and do these things. And also, of course, great thanks to the Sacramento, to the Poetry Center for allowing us to borrow their space. You know, we're so grateful to be here live with you here now doing this today.
Yes.
I'm a retired minister, so if this smells a little bit like Sunday morning, now you know what. Looking forward, one of the things that my congregations loved most was when I gave a Sunday talk that included a story like this one. You've all heard of, well, most of you know of King Solomon. You've heard of the stories of King Solomon's and the minds of King Solomon, the great, vast wealth of King Solomon and King Solomon's temple, palace, throne, kingdom building. We just know it as temple today, King Solomon's temple. King Solomon had advisors as kings do, and one of his oldest and longest advisors was named Benaiah. You probably haven't heard much of Benaiah until now. And Benaiah loved King Solomon, loved serving as advisor to him and helping him with all the decisions of the kingdom. And also, Benaiah, he thought he was really something, you know. He had done so well for so long, and he was kind of proud of himself. And King Solomon and the other advisors were kind of laughed up their sleeve at that a little bit. And one day, King Solomon called Benaiah, and he said, "Benaiah, come here. I have a task for you." And as the other advisors looked on, and King Solomon smiled a little bit, he said, "Benaiah, I had a dream, and in this dream, I was holding something in my hand. And the object that I held in my hand, when a poor man looked at it, he smiled. And when a wealthy man looked at it, his smile faded. And I know that you can do it, of all people. I know you can find me this object. And I know you can do it within the next 2 weeks before the great feast day. And so that's my task for you, Benaiah." And Benaiah, having no idea what in the world he was going to do, of course, he was so loyal to the king. Of course, he said yes, and took off to do it as the other advisors and King Solomon kind of smiled at each other and went on about their business. Well, during those 2 weeks, Benaiah traveled far and wide. He spoke to everybody he could think to speak to. He spoke to the caravan people who were merchants who had traveled all over the known world. He talked to the wisest people, the philosophers and the theologians and the wisest people that he could find, asking everybody, what could this possibly be? No one had an idea. And the 2 weeks were almost up. And Benaiah was disappointed in himself. He was discouraged. He hadn't been able to comply with the king's order yet. And walking back toward the palace after all of his journeys, he was going back discouraged and unhappy. And just on his way into the city, there was an older man sitting on a blanket on the sand, and he had some goodies like for sale, you know, like a little merchant or a little tradesman. And Benaiah said, "Well, I've already asked everybody else. I might as well ask this person too." And so he asked the man, you know, "Have you ever heard of anything like that?" And the man on the blanket said, "As a matter of fact, I have just that thing for you." And the little old man picked up a round gold ring, a very plain gold ring, and his etching tools, and he began to etch. He etched 4 Hebrew symbols on the inside of that ring. And when he handed it to Benaiah, Benaiah looked at it and saw what was in there. "That's it. That's it. I have found it. This is it." And he was so excited. He took off his beautiful big gold ring with a beautiful emerald and priceless, and gave it to the man, to the little merchant there. And he went right into the city. He went right up to King Solomon's temple. He went right in to the throne room, the gathering hall. He didn't even stop to ask what might be going on in there at that moment. He walked right in. He walked right up to King Solomon, and he said, "I have it." And King Solomon looked at it. He thought, that must be it. And King Solomon showed it to the poorest man in the area at that time. And the poorest man looked at it and he smiled. And King Solomon showed it to the wealthiest man in the court on that day. And the wealthiest man looked at it and his smile faded. And King Solomon took off his huge jewel encrusted ring and he gave it to Benaiah for finding this. And King Solomon put that simple gold band on his finger and he wore it the rest of his life. And as you may have already guessed, what was etched on the inside of that band was the 4 Hebrew symbols that stand for "this too shall pass." And as you're moving on, as we are going forward into this new year and into the new year of our life, the next phase of our lives, we can remember, I don't have to be so attached to everything and everybody. Great spiritual tenet, non-attachment. And also, everything is permanent. You know, we're not going to last forever. And none of this stuff that I seem to be so excited about, so concerned about, so attached to is going to last forever. So this too shall pass. God bless you.
Thank you, Mark. What a wonderful. I leave you with this. Don't let the future be limited by your past. That's the end of our program. Please join us February 15th next month at this very same site in that very same seat. Thank you.
Thank you.